Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Today is a big day for us. We have Tracey Chappell. She is the Republican candidate for Jackson County Prosecutor. We're happy and honored that she's on the program with us today. We're going to talk about crime in Kansas City, her candidacy for prosecutor, how she thinks she can bring improvement to that office, and how she measures up, in her opinion, with Jean Peters Baker. And we're going to also ask her about whether or not the gap within, the mayor's office and law enforcement, the chief of police in Kansas City, can be bridged, improved, and so forth. And what's her overall assessment of crime and prosecution in Kansas City? She's currently the prosecuting attorney for Blue Springs, Missouri. She's a longtime Jackson County resident. She's a wife and mother, small business owner. Once upon a time, she was appellate and trial attorney practicing in civil and criminal law, and she's the former senior assistant county counselor for Jackson County. Tracey Chappell, thank you very much for being on The Right Side.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Doug. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. We're happy to have you. We always are happy to have people that are on the right side get their message out to the people and to talk about their candidacy and what they can bring to the table. So with that in mind, I'm born and raised in Kansas City, spent most of my life in the Brookside area. And it's just a shame as I look and talk with Kansas Cityans about crime in Kansas City and their disappointment in the prosecution of the serious crimes and so forth, or where the current prosecutor's focus seems to be. So can you just, as we begin, give me your Reader's Digest version of your assessment of how you currently see the prosecutor's office and what you bring to the table by way of improving that office?
Well, Doug, I will tell you this. When I look at that office in particular, I'm quite disappointed from the time that Jean Peters Baker was appointed into that office in 2011 until now. What I'm seeing is a vast, just a growth of increase in violence. And it's not being resolved. It is not being prosecuted. It just continues on, so much so to the point of the federal government having to step in, the Department of Justice, and to send federal agents to Kansas City to try to resolve crime. I mean, we were a city known for barbecue and jazz, and now we are fifth in the nation for gun violence, and it's a shame. So we have to get a handle on that, and that certainly means prosecuting cases as they come and establishing relationships with the communities of Jackson County in which that office serves.
I think you hit a couple of things that are important right there. One, I can't help but think of, and you mentioned the federal agents coming into town, and Quentin Lucas seemed to be caught off guard by their arrival. But yet I've also heard and spoken with people who think, well, wait a minute, Mr. Mayor, you're the one that asked for them. You sent a letter out that you've tried to. Do you know anything that's going on behind the scenes with regards to that? Am I right? Do you think that the mayor did know, or was he really caught off guard by that entire string of events?
I think, Doug, in my opinion, the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, I think he's a youthful mayor, and he has a lot to learn. He has spent a considerable amount of time trying to appease all sides and appeasing none at the same time. Now, when it comes down to violent crime, I think he did reach out, and he did write a letter to Governor Parsons asking him to step in and address the violent crime here in Kansas City. Now, I think when it did happen and the community started to rebel, the federal government coming in, it was his time to appease a different group again. So then he had to play the card and say, oh, I never called them. I don't know why they're here. But he knew full well that they were coming because he actually asked for them. And now that they're here, let's utilize them to the best of our ability to get this crime resolved in Kansas City.
Right. Exactly. I think that I heard and read somewhere in the news that there has been at least 300 arrests since the federal agents have been here, and they're here to help. And I think that, the mayor, I happen to, I don't align with him, philosophically and politically. I happen to think he looks like a guy who'd be a great guy to have a beer with, to talk about these issues, and try to help his youthfulness with regards to different perspectives. I think he seems like an okay guy. I've never met him, but I would hope that when you're elected that you can help bridge certain gaps between the mayor and his reputation within the law enforcement community in Kansas City and within the prosecutor's office.
Absolutely. Doug, here's what's happening here. And like I said before, I like Quentin Lucas. Like I said before, he's young. He has a lot to learn. I mean, he has a lot of room for growth. There's a lot of room there. But when we speak about him and him trying to appease all sides and really not appeasing any, there are times when he steps outside of his role as mayor and into the lane of the prosecutor. I'm seeing that quite often, where he's talking about cases that need to be prosecuted, what he's going to do as a mayor. And I have to say, to the community, that's not his job. But because it's not his job, that's all the more reason for him to reach out to the prosecutor to see how can we bridge those gaps? How can we build those bridges of trust between the prosecutor, between the police department, the community, and the mayor and the city council? That is what is needed in order to really combat and deal with the crime here, not only in Kansas City, but also, Doug, in Eastern Jackson County. We have the violent crime here in Kansas City, but in Eastern Jackson County, we have the property crimes that are running amok. Right. And those cases have to be, they have to be dealt with as well.
Many people in Kansas City, Tracey, view Jean Peters Baker as an absentee prosecutor. In other words, they don't seem to see her very much. And when they do, it seems to be that she's prosecuting and getting herself written up in the news for things that seem just, for lack of a better term, a waste of time, or not important, or clearly not down the list of priorities that common sense citizens of Kansas City think. So tell me, in a few paragraphs, how will your administration be different if you're elected as the Jackson County prosecutor with regards to community involvement and rebuilding the trust of the public?
Thank you so much for that, Doug. If I could give a little background to start off with.
Sure.
Jean Peters Baker chose to become the chair of the Missouri Democratic Party. That takes her away from her office as the Jackson County prosecutor. So when you're spending time being the chair of a party for the state of Missouri, she has political aspirations beyond the prosecutor's office. So when I look at that, I tend to say, this is a person who's using the prosecutor's office really as a part-time job. Okay. Yep. And so when you do that, you're barely there. Crime is going up, just things are happening all over the place. And really her value system or her work ethic is not really with the community. But as your next Jackson County prosecutor, I intend on having an individual representative from every homeowners association and every neighborhood association to meet on a quarterly basis, because I have to know what is going on in your community. And as a prosecutor, how can I help? How can I infiltrate your neighborhood to make sure that we are dealing with the violent crime and we are dealing with the property crimes that are occurring in our neighborhoods? And once people know that you care, that's when you can start building that trust and move forward, and you can be a visible individual in the community in which you serve.
Absolutely. Well said. I appreciate that. Thank you. In your one of your bullet points on your campaign is that it says that you want to, and I'll quote, reestablish the public's trust in the prosecutor's office by working intimately with the community and law enforcement. And although we've touched on that briefly just a moment ago, is part of the public trust, in your opinion, lost when we see rioters and looters, arsonists and anarchists in the street that deface memorials to lost and fallen police officers? And if so, how do we begin to quell not only the mob, but to rebuild the trust that's lost when law-abiding citizens see those criminals go unpunished?
I think the public trust was gone way before the rioting started. I mean, it had dwindled significantly, but I've expressed on a number of occasions in dealing with the defacing of the statutes. And my sentiments, Doug, were, if you do not prosecute these individuals, they will go on to do it again. Nobody wanted to touch it. And the reason that they did not want to touch it is because you have an election coming up and no one wanted to be the bad guy. They just didn't want to be the bad guy and say, this is a crime. It is. And when you deal with defacing statutes or any type of property crime, if it's over $750, it's a felony. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know how many people know that, but it is considered a felony. So when we looked at the Andrew Jackson statute that was defaced in downtown at the courthouse, it's in plain view. I think it was about $5,000 in order to really repair that. Yeah. And Jean wouldn't prosecute, only because we are in a political climate and we know that election is coming up. But you have to follow the law. You have to prosecute those cases. And when she did not, it was a month and a half, 2 months later, that they defaced a memorial statute at the police department.
Right.
It was senseless, but people would have thought, they would have given it a second thought if they knew that they were going to be prosecuted. Right now, people have no confidence whatsoever that these cases are going to be prosecuted, and that's why they do the crime.
Right. Exactly. And then the frustration of the vast majority of people who happen, by the way, to be law-abiding citizens is so high, and we get so fed up that we think, and you can count me among one of these people who think that, look, people like Jean Peters Baker and others in what I call the New Democratic Socialist Party. I think the Democratic Party of John F. Kennedy is dead. I think that's what we have is now these members of this particular party simply want the chaos to continue, to your point, because it's election year, and they think that it hurts people like you who want to run on the Republican side. They certainly think that it hurts President Trump and so forth. And so I think you hit it right on the head. And I think that people are hungry to hear that kind of an answer because if you're elected, we don't want you to, we want, law and order, no matter what party who's in the office or no matter what the crime, we want law and order and we want a sense of stability. I mean, so thank you for that answer. I think it's an important one, especially for the people of Jackson County as they try to decide whether or not, what kind of prosecutor do they want in this town?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Doug, I would tell you, I will say this, when President Trump instituted the Operation Legend.
Yes.
You had a lot of uproar, people in the community saying, we don't want the feds in our business. We don't want them here. They're going to be military trucks driving down the middle of the streets. It's going to be martial law. And, it was when people don't know what's going on, when left to their own imaginations, the imagination takes them to places that they shouldn't go. But I will say I'm glad that he did institute Operation Legend, because a couple of days ago, the young man that shot into the home and killed the 4-year-old little boy, he was apprehended, arrested, charged. And that was at the behest of the federal agents working closely with the local police department. So I am glad that he did send agents here. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's needed.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. We don't hear a lot of that kind of news in the media today. Absolutely. when the bad guys are caught. So yeah, we appreciate that. Before we go, time for just a couple more quick ones for you, Tracey. When we talk about crime prevention, I think it's important, and I know it's important to your campaign, but to be specific with regards to how you, as the Jackson County Prosecutor, would handle two things. One, mental illness as an overarching problem within, when we think of the word crime, to segregate those with mental issues out, and how would you deal with those? And then two, the youth of the city. So regardless, the general crime population is one thing, but mental illness and crimes that are committed, with youth and teens. What about diversion programs? What kind of programs with the mentally ill first would you try to implement or enhance? And then the same thing for youth and teen crime.
Okay. So I'm going to speak on the youth. I'll speak on the mental illness portion first.
Sure.
There are, my goodness, in the Jackson County Detention Center, there are about 2/3 of individuals that are there that are suffering from some type of distress or mental illness. It's less often heard that when people they come into the Jackson County Detention Center, they do early screenings of them. And they usually ask them, have you ever been diagnosed with a mental illness? Or they ask them questions such as what type of medications are you currently taking. That's going to give you an insight into what's going on with that person's mental state.
Okay.
Those individuals that are readily identified, there needs to be a collaboration with the jail and the prosecutor's office to deal with those individuals who are suffering from mental illness in a different manner. If those are low-level, nonviolent offenses, maybe drug use where they're self-medicating, even with that, it's still possession of drugs, so that's still a crime. We need diversions for those individuals. We can send them to mental health court. Right now, mental health court, it depends on the budget that's there. We need to expand that because more often than not, we need these people to be properly medicated so that they are in their right mind and they know how to handle themselves. That's certainly not happening right now. So first and foremost, we need the early screenings and treatments. We need more people in diversion courts, and we need to make sure that these people are on their medications, that they're compliant in order to be in their right mind to follow along so that we don't just incarcerate our way out of mental health.
Yes.
We can no longer do that. And then number two, when we're dealing with our youth, there are some cities that have what we call youth courts. Kids that are really, under the age of maybe 15 years of age. If it's low level nonviolent offenses, they usually send them to youth court where their peers are there to judge them. And so, that's a good tool to have. We need parent involvement. Certainly we need, other peer involvement so that we can start to recognize the error of our ways at a young age so that it doesn't carry on into adulthood. So we need more youth courts. We need more diversion programs for youth that are for those low-level nonviolent offenses.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Are you a believer in second chances for kids and so forth that, are found guilty of lesser crimes?
I am, because, they say the brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25.
Right. Yeah.
That's for men. Women, we mature much younger.
I'm over 50. I'm still waiting to get there. Thanks for pointing that out. Well, that'll be all from Tracey Chappell today.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I want to get your opinion as we begin to wrap up here today, Tracey, and I have enjoyed speaking with you. And ladies and gentlemen, Tracey Chappell with us today, the Republican candidate for Jackson County Prosecutor. Tracey, look, but if there's a lot of independent voters out there and beyond party, whether or not Republican, Democrat, in my view, evidence of the obvious is sufficient. And when I say that, I mean, we look at the TV, we see the news, we can see which cases or not that Jean Peters Baker decides that she's going to prosecute or not. And for me, I mean, it's obvious. There's a lot of things lacking in the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office with regards to what gets prosecuted and what doesn't. So if you were to give your Reader's Digest version of why Tracey Chappell, why you, what can you bring, what is different with regards to how you would run that office, and why people that are out there that are common sense, independent, or Democratic voters, maybe people that have never voted before because they feel frustrated. What's your message to them, Tracey?
Well, as your next Jackson County prosecutor, what you get with me versus what you do not get with Jean Peters Baker, you will not get corruption, the level of corruption that I've actually seen in that office. I want people to know that not only am I the prosecutor in Blue Springs, but I am also a defense attorney. And believe you me, Doug, I have really seen it all. I've seen the corruption. I've seen the lies from Ms. Baker, from her to me in email formats that I have. I've seen her second in command in email format lie about cases. I've seen her second in command tell homicide detectives to withhold evidence, pertaining to cases, which leads to wrongful convictions. These are things that I'm seeing myself. And the reason that I run, because otherwise there would be no need for me to run if I thought she were doing a good job. I've seen we are number 2 in the entire state of Missouri. Out of 114 counties, we are number 2 in sending people to the Missouri Department of Corrections. Most of those, about 40% of those cases are drug possession cases. where people probably they need some treatment as opposed to sending them to be incarcerated for, 10, 15 years.
Good grief.
I mean, it's just what you're going to get with me, a person who's going to actually deal with the violent crime, who's going to connect with the community, who will not throw the police officers under the bus for political aspirations, a person who's going to deal with our mentally ill, and a person who's going to state that we are having a new law and order, and that law and order is to hold people accountable for all violent crimes, regardless of who they are. Those are things that have to be done,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So those, I mean, that's actually quite shocking what you just said. I mean, there's evidence, or at least you've seen the current prosecutor withhold evidence in situations that would hold people in jail. That's amazing. I mean, that's just absolutely shocking that happened. Is there a remedy for that? I mean, it just as a, what do you do? Where's the accountability? Is it just with the voters? How come she's not held accountable to those kinds of things?
It is the voters that have to police the prosecutor's office. People are talking all the time and saying, what can we do? Outside of reporting that individual, because we're all attorneys. Yeah. So outside of reporting that individual to the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, the people that hold our law license, your other remedy is to get out and vote. And so that's why I tell people on November 3rd, if you don't like what you currently have, you have the right to change that office. And on November 3rd, that will be your voice, your vote.
Wow. Absolutely amazing that there's that level of corruption in the current Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. Tracey Chappell, I thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll be following that up as the best we can on this program. We thank you for your time today. And listen, it was I met you a week or so ago. It was a pleasure to meet you in person. And thank you for the honor of being here on the right side. We appreciate it very much. And we not only endorse you, but we wish you the very best in your campaign.
Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking with you soon.
I hope so. After you win, I expect the first interview. Okay.
You get it. You get it.
All right. There it is. All right.
All right. Take care. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Okay. Thanks, Tracey. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Doug Billings along with Tracey Chappell, the Republican candidate for Jackson County Prosecutor. Please be an informed voter. Look her up. Do your research. I implore you to make sure that you know the difference between what's going on now in the corrupt Jackson County Prosecutor's Office and what change and fresh air that Tracey Chappell can bring to that office and to Kansas City at large. Once again, Doug Billings on the right side. Please be sure to subscribe to us on all of the major podcast platforms. We are on all of them. And if you want to watch the program, check us out over on YouTube. Thanks again, everybody. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless and guide the United States. Good day. Ladies and gentlemen, hi, Doug Billings here on the right side. You know, it's not every day that we here at the program get to meet someone who rubs elbows with American heroes. But we've done just that, and he's become a friend of the program, and we're grateful for it. The Commander's Artist, otherwise known on Twitter as The Real Mad Dog 58. Make sure you look him up and give him a follow on Twitter at The Real Mad Dog 58. And more importantly, perhaps, look him up on the web, www.thecommandersartist.com. He's the personal artist of General Mike Flynn. Personal friend of the general's is a personal friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm flattered that he's become a friend of the right side. You can check out his artwork just over my right shoulder, the right side logo that we use at the beginning and end of every program. There's one of me up there in my Revolutionary War garb, protecting the Republic from intellectual liberal immaturity, and one of Donald Trump up there as well. We love it. My chosen leader. TheCommandersArtist.com and The Real Mad Dog 58 on Twitter. Mad Dog, Commander's Artist, thank you, brother. Thank you for your friendship, for all you've done for the show. Cheers.